The night of Christmas Eve had fallen gently over San Giovanni Rotondo, wrapping the Capuchin monastery in a silence so deep it felt almost alive. The wind moved softly through the stone corridors, carrying with it the scent of cold earth and burning oil from the small lamps that flickered like fragile stars against the darkness. It was a holy night, yet something in the air suggested it would not be an ordinary one. Inside the monastery, the brothers moved quietly, their sandals brushing against the worn floor, as if they feared disturbing an unseen presence. Shadows stretched long along the walls, bending and trembling with every flame. Outside, the world slept. Inside, heaven seemed awake. Those who had gathered for the midnight mass sensed it before anything happened. A weight, gentle but unmistakable, rested upon their hearts. It was not fear, but awe, a silent expectation, as though the boundary between the visible and the invisible had grown thin. Padre Pio was among them. He stood apart, wrapped in his simple habit, his head slightly bowed. The marks of suffering were hidden beneath the cloth, yet everyone knew they were there, signs of a man who lived in constant communion with mysteries most dared not imagine. His face, usually worn by pain and long hours in the confessional, bore a strange calm that night. Some later said it looked as though he were listening, waiting. The monastery bells did not yet ring, but time itself seemed to hesitate. In the half-light, a single oil lamp burned near the sacristy, its flame wavering, casting halos upon the walls. Prayers murmured softly, blending into the stillness like breath. No one could have known what was about to unfold. No one could have guessed that before the night would end, heaven itself would draw near, not with thunder or fire, but with the fragile presence of a child. And when dawn would finally come, those who witnessed the night would struggle to find words for what they had seen, because some mysteries are not meant to be spoken aloud.
Padre Pio was no ordinary friar. Beneath the rough wool of his Capuchin habit, he bore the 5 wounds of Christ, silent signs of a soul chosen to share in divine suffering. To those who saw him daily, he appeared simple, even severe, a man of few comforts and many pains. Yet his life unfolded between 2 worlds, one visible, marked by prayer and sacrifice, the other unseen, alive with angels, souls, and mysteries known only to heaven. Supernatural events seemed to gather around him like shadows at dusk, and on Christmas night, that hidden world would draw closer than ever before. Long before the world would come to know him as Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, he was simply Francesco, an introspective child growing up among the rocky fields and olive trees of southern Italy. Pietrelcina was poor, quiet, and deeply rooted in faith. Life there followed the rhythm of the seasons, the tolling of church bells, and the simple prayers whispered at dawn and dusk. It was in this humble soil that a singular devotion began to take root in the boy's heart. From a very young age, Francesco was drawn not only to God, but especially to the mystery of God made small. The child Jesus fascinated him. While other children played without care, he lingered in silence, imagining the stable of Bethlehem, the straw, the cold night, and the fragile infant lying in a manger. There was something about the vulnerability of the Christ child that spoke directly to his soul. Each year, as winter approached, Francesco took it upon himself to prepare the nativity scene for his family home. He began early, sometimes as soon as October, searching the countryside with other shepherd boys for pieces of clay. With patient hands, he shaped tiny figures, shepherds frozen in wonder, sheep clustered together for warmth, and the distant magi on their slow journey. Yet none of these figures received the care he reserved for the infant. The figure of the Christ child was never finished on the first attempt. Francesco would mold it, study it, then break it apart and begin again. Again and again, he reshaped the small body, the face, the tiny limbs, dissatisfied each time. It was not perfection he sought, but presence. He wanted the child to look loved, to look real. Only when his heart felt at peace would he place the figure in the manger. Those who later reflected on these moments understood that something extraordinary was unfolding, though unseen at the time. This was not merely a child's game or a sentimental devotion. It was a silent dialogue, a heart reaching out to God in his smallest, most humble form. That devotion would never fade. It would follow Francesco into the monastery, into suffering, into the wounds of Christ himself. And in time, that childlike love, pure, persistent, and humble, would be answered in a way no one could have imagined.
As the feast of Christmas drew near, Padre Pio entered once more into the sacred rhythm of the novena to the child Jesus, a devotion he approached not as a ritual, but as a living encounter. For 9 days, prayer shaped his hours, and silence deepened his nights. Each invocation was offered with the simplicity of a child and the intensity of a soul accustomed to suffering. To Padre Pio, the novena was not a preparation for a memory of Bethlehem, but for a presence that was already drawing near. During those days, something within him shifted. His prayers became quieter, yet heavier with meaning, as if words were no longer sufficient. The mystery of the Incarnation pressed upon his heart with renewed force, the infinite God choosing smallness, the eternal entering time, the Almighty resting in the weakness of a newborn child. For Padre Pio, this was not theology to be explained, but fire to be endured. In a letter written to one of his spiritual children, he attempted, imperfectly, to describe what was happening within his soul. When the novena of the Holy Child Jesus begins, he wrote, I feel as though my soul is born again to a new life. These were not poetic words chosen for effect. They were the confession of a man being inwardly remade. The approach of Christmas awakened in him a spiritual infancy, a return to the radical trust and openness that only children possess. Yet this rebirth came with an overwhelming awareness of limitation. My heart feels too small, he continued, to contain all the blessings that descend from heaven. Grace pressed against the narrow walls of his humanity, stretching them to the point of pain. Padre Pio knew well that the human heart is never capable of receiving God fully, only of surrendering itself to be filled as God wills. This tension between fullness and poverty became the space where grace worked most deeply. The novena stripped him of spiritual defenses. Before the mystery of God made flesh, Padre Pio felt exposed, fragile, and unworthy, yet loved beyond measure. The child Jesus did not terrify him as the judge might. Instead, he disarmed him. The humility of the infant dissolved resistance, inviting the friar to kneel inwardly, empty-handed. Unbeknownst to him, these days of prayer were shaping his soul for something extraordinary. The novena was not only a remembrance, it was a preparation. Heaven was tuning a heart already marked by suffering, widening it through humility and longing. The silence, the tears, the quiet joy, all were signs of a soul being made ready. For when God chooses to reveal himself, he does not arrive unannounced. He prepares the ground first. And in the depths of Padre Pio's reborn soul, the child of Bethlehem was already at the door. The midnight Mass of Christmas was never an ordinary liturgy when Padre Pio stood at the altar. Yet on this night, time itself seemed to surrender. The hours stretched, unmeasured and unnoticed, as though heaven had gently pressed its hand upon the clock. What should have lasted moments unfolded slowly, deliberately, carried by a depth of reverence that held everyone captive. Padre Pio vested in silence. Over his simple habit, he wore a white cope woven with gold, its pale brilliance catching the trembling light of the candles. As the Mass began, those present sensed at once that something within him had shifted. His movements were slower, heavier, as if each gesture bore eternal weight. When he raised his hands in prayer, they did not merely bless, they trembled, suspended between earth and heaven. As the liturgy progressed, Padre Pio entered into a state that many would later struggle to describe. His gaze no longer rested on what was visible alone. His face, marked by years of suffering, seemed to soften, then transform. Witnesses spoke of a light upon his features, subtle yet unmistakable. The lines of pain gave way to an expression of wonder, almost childlike, as though he were beholding a reality hidden from all others. At the end of the Mass, the church remained hushed. Padre Pio took the thurible, and incense rose slowly, curling through the air like prayer made visible. He approached the statue of the child Jesus, reverently incensing it, his head bowed low. Then, preceded by altar boys and accompanied by his brother friars holding lit candles, he lifted the small cradle into his arms. A procession formed in solemn silence. From the choir to the altar, and from the altar to the nativity scene, Padre Pio carried the child Jesus close to his heart. Those nearest noticed how tightly he held the cradle, as though protecting something infinitely precious. His face, now radiant, shone with a joy that seemed to come from another world. One by one, the faithful approached to kiss the statue. As lips touched the tiny knees and feet of the child, Padre Pio smiled, softly, openly, his eyes glistening with tears of joy. It was a joy unrestrained, yet profoundly reverent, flowing freely from a heart laid bare before God. Then, with voice strong and unguarded, Padre Pio joined the friars and the congregation in song. "Tu scendi dalle stelle" filled the church, simple, tender, and piercingly beautiful. He sang with an open heart and a full voice, as if the words themselves were prayer incarnate. When the final notes faded, a heavy silence followed. No one moved, no one spoke. The air felt dense with mystery, as though something unseen still lingered among them. In that silence, the faithful knew they had touched something beyond explanation, a joy not born of this world, and a mystery too sacred for words. Before the bells announced the beginning of the midnight Mass, the sacristy of the monastery was filled with a quiet, human warmth. A large basin of glowing embers had been brought in, its heat a small mercy against the winter cold that seeped through the ancient stone walls. The friars gathered around it instinctively, extending their hands toward the fire, their breath visible in the dim light. For a brief moment, it was an ordinary scene, brothers sharing silence, cold and anticipation. The flames danced softly, casting restless shadows across the walls. Faces appeared and disappeared in the shifting light, carved momentarily in gold, and then returned to darkness. The smell of smoke mixed with incense lingering from earlier prayers. Outside, the night remained still, as though the world itself were holding its breath. Someone began the rosary. The familiar rhythm of the prayers rose gently in the room, bead by bead, word by word. Ave Maria. The voices were low, almost hesitant at first, then steadier, weaving together into a single murmur. The rosary wrapped the room in a cadence older than memory, anchoring each soul in a prayer that bridged heaven and earth. Padre Pio stood among them, not apart, but at the center. His eyes were closed, his head bowed, the beads slipping slowly through his fingers. Yet there was something different about him that night. Those closest to him later recalled a change they could not name, a stillness deeper than concentration, a presence that seemed to draw the room inward. As the prayers continued, the air itself seemed to thicken. The warmth of the fire no longer felt like heat alone, but like a living pulse. Shadows along the walls grew longer, more fluid, as if responding to an unseen light. The voices praying the rosary softened, instinctively lowering, though no one had spoken a word. Padre Pio did not move, but his expression changed. His breathing slowed. His face, often marked by strain, appeared peaceful, almost expectant. It was as though he were listening to something the others could not hear. The sacristy, moments before so ordinary, began to feel set apart, enclosed within an invisible boundary. The friars sensed it too. A quiet unease mingled with reverence settled over them. No one dared to speak. The rosary continued, but the words felt heavier now, charged with a presence that pressed gently upon every heart. In that small room, surrounded by firelight and prayer, the ordinary began to give way to the extraordinary. The line between what was seen and what was unseen grew thin, fragile, almost transparent. And though no one yet understood it, the moment was already preparing them for a vision that would soon defy all explanation. Without warning, the stillness in the sacristy broke, not with sound, but with light. It was not the harsh blaze of fire, nor the trembling glow of the oil lamps, but a radiance that seemed to rise from nowhere and everywhere at once. The shadows recoiled, retreating along the walls, as if yielding to a presence far greater than flame. In the heart of that sudden brightness, the impossible unfolded. In Padre Pio's arms appeared a child. Those who would later bear witness struggled to describe him, for no earthly language was sufficient. He was not a statue, nor a vision shaped by imagination, but the living presence of the child Jesus himself, small, luminous, and wrapped in a light that seemed to breathe. The radiance did not blind, it invited. It carried warmth without heat, clarity without pain. Padre Pio's entire being changed in that instant. His posture softened, his shoulders relaxing as though a great weight had been lifted. His face, long familiar with suffering, was transfigured. The deep lines of pain faded, replaced by an expression of astonished joy. His eyes shone with a brilliance not their own, fixed entirely upon the child resting in his arms. A smile slowly formed upon his lips, gentle, radiant, unguarded. It was the smile of a soul meeting the fulfillment of its deepest longing. In that moment, Padre Pio was no longer the friar marked by wounds, nor the confessor burdened by sorrow. He was a child himself, held in silent communion with God made small. Time dissolved. The rosary faltered, voices falling away into stunned silence. Hearts pounded, yet bodies remained frozen, as though movement might shatter what they were witnessing. The light pulsed softly, enveloping both the friar and the child in a single embrace of glory. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the vision vanished. The light withdrew, leaving the familiar shadows in its wake. The sacristy returned to its dimness. Padre Pio stood once more among the brothers, his arms empty, yet his face still bore the trace of that otherworldly joy. For a breathless moment, no one dared to speak. They knew, without doubt, that they had glimpsed a mystery not meant for many eyes. And though the child was gone, his presence lingered, etched forever into the silence of that holy night.
The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. The friars stood motionless, unsure whether they had truly witnessed what their hearts insisted was real. The fire still glowed. The shadows returned to their places, yet nothing was the same. Padre Pio slowly lowered his gaze. For a brief moment, his eyes met those of a single witness, a glance that pierced deeper than words ever could. In that instant, understanding passed between them. Padre Pio knew. He had seen it in the witness's face, in the awe that could not be hidden. He stepped forward quietly, his movements deliberate, almost hesitant. Drawing near, he leaned in just enough for his voice to be heard by one soul alone. It was no command, no warning, but a plea spoken in humility. "Don't tell anyone." The words were barely more than a whisper, yet they carried an immense weight. They sealed the moment, enclosing it in silence. What had been revealed was not meant for curiosity, nor for acclaim. It was a gift and a burden entrusted to the heart of one who must now guard it faithfully. The witness felt the gravity of that trust settle like a stone upon the chest. How could such a mystery remain hidden? How could one remain silent after beholding heaven touch earth? Yet the silence itself was part of the mystery. Some truths, once spoken, lose their holiness. Padre Pio turned away, his face once again composed, but something of the vision lingered in his expression, a quiet tenderness, a distant joy. He returned to prayer as though nothing extraordinary had occurred, carrying the secret not as a triumph, but as a cross. And the question remained, unspoken yet unavoidable. Why him? Why would God choose this wounded friar to cradle the light of the world, even for a fleeting moment? Perhaps the answer lay not in his suffering, nor in the signs that marked his body, but in the simplicity of his heart, a heart small enough, humble enough to receive God without resistance, and strong enough to keep his mystery hidden in silence. 2 years later, on another Christmas night, the mystery returned, this time witnessed by different eyes. The monastery lay in deep darkness, its long corridors stretching into shadow, broken only by the trembling flame of a small oil lamp. The silence was complete, disturbed only by distant footsteps moving slowly toward the church. Padre Raffaele, who lived beside Padre Pio and had shared decades of life with him, had risen to attend the midnight mass. As he stepped into the corridor, his eyes adjusted to the gloom, and then froze. Emerging from the darkness was Padre Pio. Yet he did not walk as he normally did. Padre Pio moved slowly, almost reverently, as though every step carried immense significance. Around him shimmered a band of light, soft yet unmistakable, enveloping his entire figure. The walls seemed to fall away before it, the darkness retreating in silent obedience. Then Padre Raffaele saw what Padre Pio held in his arms. Cradled against his chest was the child Jesus. The sight struck him with a force beyond fear. His knees gave way, and he fell to the ground, overwhelmed by awe.
Words failed him, breath failed him. Before him passed a mystery too great for the human mind to contain. God made small, carried through the night by a wounded friar. Padre Pio continued forward, bathed in light, his face serene, absorbed entirely in the presence he bore. His eyes did not glance to either side, he did not slow. It was as if the earthly world had ceased to exist for him altogether. He passed directly before Padre Raffaele, yet showed no sign of recognition. When the light faded and the corridor returned to darkness, Padre Raffaele remained kneeling, shaken and silent. There was no doubt left in his heart. What he had seen was no illusion, no dream born of fatigue. It was confirmation. Heaven had chosen Padre Pio once more.
What Padre Pio felt in those moments, no witness could truly know. The visions were seen by others, but the interior fire they ignited belonged to him alone. He was a man accustomed to silence, and the deepest movements of his soul were guarded with great care. When asked directly, he often lowered his eyes, allowing the question to fade unanswered. Only on rare occasions did a fragment escape his reserve. To one of his spiritual children, he once spoke softly of that happy night. The words were simple, almost inadequate, yet they carried a depth that could not be hidden. He confessed that his soul had been flooded with a holy love, a love directed toward God, who had chosen to become flesh, to enter the world not with power, but with weakness. For Padre Pio, the mystery of the Incarnation was the greatest paradox of all. The Almighty made himself small. The Eternal accepted time. The Creator allowed himself to be carried in human arms. This divine humility did not diminish God, it revealed him. And it was precisely this humility that wounded Padre Pio's heart with love. He understood that the child of Bethlehem was not a symbol of innocence alone, but the voluntary self-emptying of God. In becoming an infant, God placed himself entirely at the mercy of humanity. Such humility demanded a response, not of fear, but of surrender. Padre Pio knew that words could only cheapen what had been given to him. The experience belonged to the realm of mystery, where language breaks down and theology bows in reverence. The Incarnation could be studied, preached, and defended, but it could only be lived in silence. And so he spoke little. The joy of that night did not fade, but neither did it seek expression. It sank deep into his soul, becoming prayer, sacrifice, and love, poured out in hidden ways. For some encounters with God are not meant to be explained, only adored, in the quiet humility of a heart that has seen too much to speak. The manger was always placed before the confessional. It was no coincidence. From his narrow wooden seat, Padre Pio could see the child Jesus as he listened to the confessions of countless souls. Hour after hour he remained there, bearing sins, offering mercy, his wounded hands hidden but ever present. His gaze often drifted from the penitent to the infant in the manger, as if drawing strength from that silent presence. Christmas for Padre Pio was inseparable from mercy. There, before the child who came to save, sinner and Savior met, smallness answering smallness, love answering love. Despite the weight of suffering he carried each day, Padre Pio possessed a heart astonishingly young. At Christmas, that hidden childlike joy surfaced without restraint. A simple lullaby, a humble shepherd's tune, or the familiar notes of a rustic carol could draw him into silent rapture. His eyes would soften, his expression distant, as though the music had carried him back to Bethlehem itself.
In those moments, the friar marked by wounds became a child again, listening, loving, unguarded. Christmas was not sentimentality for him. It was pure joy, untouched by calculation or pride, rising naturally from a heart that recognized God in small things. And it was precisely this simplicity that explains the visions. Heaven did not descend to satisfy curiosity, nor to offer spectacle. God revealed himself because he was welcomed. The child Jesus came to a heart that resembled his own, humble, poor, and open. In Padre Pio, heaven touched earth not through power, but through love that asked for nothing in return. The visions were not rewards, but signs, reminders that God draws near wherever hearts become small enough to receive him. In childlike trust and surrender, the distance between heaven and earth disappears.
Did the visions end that night, or did they simply withdraw into silence? No one can say. Heaven does not always announce its coming with light and wonder. Often it chooses concealment. The extraordinary fades, not because God has departed, but because his presence has learned to dwell unseen. What happened to Padre Pio may not have repeated itself in visible form, yet the mystery itself never ceased. God continues to come, quietly, patiently, wherever a heart remains open. Each Christmas, the child still waits, not in blinding radiance, not carried through corridors of light, but hidden in humility. He waits in prayer, in repentance, in the small acts of love the world rarely notices. He comes as he always has, vulnerable, gentle, easily overlooked. The question is not whether heaven still touches earth, but whether we are watching. Padre Pio recognized the child because his heart had become small enough to receive him. He did not seek visions, he sought God, and so God came. This is the mystery offered to every soul at Christmas. The child stands at the door, not demanding, not forcing, only waiting. And if he were to come to you, without glory, without signs, would you recognize him if he came?